Nice to see you. I am Sandrine Dixson-Declève, co-president of the Club of Rome, and we are going to get the rest of this conference to meet us up here because we're going to kick some ass for the next hour and a half. We've got an amazing panel for you, but most importantly, I want to take you on the current roller coaster ride of reality. I want to take you down our pathways of how we can change the world. Earth for All, a survival guide for humanity. I'm going to show you a film, then I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of where we are today, and then I'm going to bring my unbelievable kick-ass panel up. And we're also going to have a bit of a musical tribute, which I'm going to be fully transparent, is going to be given by my lovely daughter, Tessa Dixon. So get ready for a good time. This is a session we're going to laugh, cry, and think together. Let's start with the film. Thank you.
The world has never been so rich, but we're still susceptible to shocks and crises. Can we build more resilient societies? Not utopian, but functioning and fair. This is the story of Earth for All. We assembled a group of economic thinkers and scientists and developed a computer model to test their big ideas. We then asked, what's possible in one generation? If we carry on as normal, population and material footprints continue to grow, particularly due to overconsumption in rich countries. The gap between the richest and everyone else widens. Social tensions worsen. Climate change impacts become ever worse. But what if the world takes a giant leap now, with 5 extraordinary turnarounds? In this possible and plausible future, all people can live a good life within safer planetary boundaries. We avoid the worst climate impacts. Poverty ends earlier. Population peaks lower. Well-being rises. Social tensions fall. Nature starts to heal. Incredibly, the investment needed is only 2 to 4% of global income. But we do need massive investments now, driven by governments on a clear mission to enact the turnarounds. Another big idea is a citizens fund for each country, where companies pay to use our commons, the wealthiest contribute fairly, and the funds are distributed to all citizens equally. But rebooting economies won't happen on its own. We need a global movement, kicked off with worldwide citizens' assemblies. This is Earth for All. How the story ends is up to you. Join earthforall.live.
Wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the escapade that we went down, myself and my colleagues and many others, to try to bring some hope to all of us, but also to understand reality, because we believe that Earth for All is both possible and essential. We have no choice. And I don't know why the clicker is not working. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen who are helping me with the technical aspects. There we go. Okay. But the thing is, let's be clear. This is not just some niche fantasy. We've even seen that at the World Economic Forum, most of the CEOs have rated that in the next 2 to 10 years, social and environmental tensions are going to be the most important point with regard to society and also business leadership. So how do we address the global risks that we know are hitting us today and plan for tomorrow? What does that look like when we take into consideration the major elephants in the room? Elephant number 1, our material footprint. A material footprint that we know is largest in the wealthiest countries, basically Europe, the United States, high-income countries. Elephant number 2, the percentage of CO2 emissions are coming from those countries, and it is the most vulnerable that are getting hit by most of the climate impacts. We know that our 10% of total lifestyle consumption emissions is only responsible by the poorest 50% of society. And here's elephant number 3, that those poorest 50% take less than 15% in total earnings, while the richest 10% take well over 40%. So within country wealth distribution, we see that this has been moving the wrong direction. We see that we have growing inequality and growing poverty across the globe at the same time that we have the compound effects of COVID, climate, and conflict. So what can we do? Well, first, we need to understand what is this obsession with wealth. Not only are we obsessed with wealth, but we are obsessed with consumption. And yes, we can see in this particular graph that life satisfaction is actually going down the wealthier you get. There is a ceiling of about $60,000 per annum. And then, having more doesn't necessarily make us more happy. So how do we contend with this? Our challenge is to understand how we can actually shift our economies to deal with this inequality, to bring people within a social equity system, and at the same time within the planetary boundaries. That's what we call the donut. This also means a dignified existence for most people, and you will see that this is fundamental. That transformational economics for the 21st century enables accounting for social and environmental risks. That this also expands our perspective of public goods and the global commons and takes them into account. That it corrects inequity and that it increases the agency of women and of workers. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that our economy is currently over-financialized. You can basically fire 10,000 people and your shares go up as a company. Shareholder value is the premise of today's economy. And yet our economy is supposed to service people. And now in particular, it has to service people, planet, and prosperity at the same time. So our analysis, what we're calling the spaghetti, is a series of these different interrelationships. Understanding the link between social tipping points, environmental tipping points, resource use, our financial system, our economic system, access to healthcare, etc., etc. And lo and behold, when we run the model, what do we discover? That the speed of action on planetary boundaries is a function of the speed of action on inequality and poverty. Working with Johan Rockström, who is the rock star in climate science, his aha moment was this: understanding that actually we will not meet our planetary boundaries, we will not meet our greenhouse gas emission objectives unless we deal with this very fact. So how do we do that? How do we do that when we know that we've got farmers in the street that are claiming for a fair price for their goods, who are saying now that they think that it is climate and green that is making their lives more difficult, and yet we know that that's a fallacy? What are the arguments that we need to come up with, the narratives that will bring more people on the journey? That is what Earth for All is about. Earth for All is about two key scenarios. The too little, too late scenario, which is the business as usual scenario, it's today's scenario, and the giant leap scenario. A giant leap scenario where societies are more resilient, where extreme weather events come and go without topping the entire nations, without conflicting people's own equity. This is what the giant leap is about. The giant leap is about a systems change agenda for well-being within the planetary boundaries. And through our analysis, in talking also to experts across the globe through our Transformational Economics Commissions, we have come to 5 key turnarounds. Those 5 key turnarounds, as was said in the small film, basically will cost us 2 to 4% of GDP per annum. probably much less than the defense budgets of a couple of countries. But what is so important about these 5 key turnarounds? These 5 key turnarounds look at poverty, empowerment, and inequality first, and then food and energy as key underbellies of change. Poverty, empowerment, and inequality means that we need to address that key elephant in the room. One, giving women more agency, in particular in countries where actually women are not even allowed to go to school. Ensuring that women are not only in board positions and enabled to have decision-making positions, but that in low-income economies, they are actually part of the society, not just a parallel economy. Ensuring that poverty is reduced inextricably, and ensuring that actually inequality, not only here in France or in the United States, where I grew up in San Francisco, and we see the highest homeless rate, we see the highest addiction rate, we see the highest mental illness and suicide rate, and yet we also see the highest wealth. Inequality is not just an issue between North and South. It is definitely an issue within our countries. So how do we deal with that? Because we know that if we don't deal with it, tension will increase. And we're seeing it now. Check out those farmers. They're getting pretty pissed. And so many others that are starting to say enough is enough. Oil and gas companies make $2.8 billion windfall profits per day on the back of energy poverty. That is the reality, ladies and gentlemen, at a time when actually just this past week in Texas, oil and gas producers said, gone is the age of renewables. We're going to continue pumping oil and gas because we feel that actually all we need to do is clean it up and it'll be fine. Even if they clean it up and even if we reduce our emissions from oil and gas, the problem is that none of that wealth is trickling down into people's pockets. Instead, people are getting increasingly more constrained. So social tension is fundamental. Social tension by 2030 will already start to be reduced if we move forward in the giant leap. And here is the key. Does anybody know, and now I've said it here, the difference between 1978 CEO salaries and now is 1,400%. Employee salaries are 18%. And in most countries, inflation is 30%. How is it that people will not start to get pissed off? They're starting to get pissed off now, and it's starting with the farmers. And it will be others, either in rural areas where they feel completely disenfranchised, or in urban areas where we know that, for example, the younger generation can't even afford to pay for housing, so they're all moving back in with their parents. This is the reality check. And inequality reduces trust. And because of this, it's playing out across Europe right now in terms of the European elections. This is the biggest year across the globe. 60% of citizens will go and vote. And here across Europe, we are seeing a drastic shift towards the right. Why? Because the right has used fear-mongering and has squeezed out to all of the citizens that somehow green is bad, climate is bad, transitioning is bad for you, and therefore we will protect you. This is a problem, and we must all make sure that we stand up and vote in the European elections to make sure that this doesn't happen. This is a 1930 situation, a pre-World War II situation. Can you please put the screen back up? Oh, it's all still here. Last few points. 74% of G20 citizens would prefer a well-being economy. If you see here, our giant leap scenario enables, through those 5 key turnarounds, through a transfer of capital, enables us to move towards a well-being economy. That's 2 to 4% of global income, which is needed to invest in a better future, as I said before. So, ladies and gentlemen, the faster we act, the better. We need to make sure that our current efforts are dramatically increased. We need to make sure that the reality check is felt, it's embodied. But that should not make us become ostriches. That should not make us freak out and think, this is too much for me. I can't do anything. Instead, let's prove Jane Goodall wrong. She has said, we, the human species, are the most intelligent, but they're not the wisest. I want all of us to show that we can both be wise and act at the same time and adopt an Earth for all so that people, planet, and prosperity can come together.